The Detroit Pistons have gotten off to a great start to the new NBA season. Through their first 13 games, they have a record of 11-2. They're currently on a 9-game winning streak, and all of this is good enough to have them at first place in the Eastern Conference. And looking at the Pistons through these first 13 games, they've been dominating in some of the most important aspects in the game of basketball. Looking at the Pistons, they're one of the best defensive teams in the NBA as they rank second in defensive rating, and also they're one of the most physical teams in the NBA, coming in at number 3 in total rebounds per game, and they're 5th in the NBA in offensive rebounds per game. So they're doing really well in those areas, and I think this season has been so impressive for the Detroit Pistons because they had a lot of eyes on them coming into this season because they performed so well last year. Everyone wants to know if the Detroit Pistons can do it again, do it for a consecutive year, and so far they're playing at an even higher level than we've seen from last season. And I want to look at this winning streak for the Detroit Pistons, and I think this winning streak has showed us a lot about this team, and I also think it has proven that the Detroit Pistons, that right now that this team has a legit identity, they have a legit system, and they have a legit culture in the building right now, because this offseason the Detroit Pistons, we lost 2 players who were very beneficial to what we did last year, Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley. We don't have those guys on the roster right now. We bring in Caris LeVert, we bring in Duncan Robinson, and the Detroit Pistons, they're still winning ball games, and at the beginning of the season they're winning them at a very high rate, 11-2 so far on the season. And then I look at this winning streak and what else points out to the Detroit Pistons having all of that, a legit culture, identity, and a philosophy around the game of basketball. These last 3 games on the winning streak, and I want to start in that 4th quarter against the Washington Wizards. That was big time right there because the Detroit Pistons, they were going through some injury adversity. That's normal for every team, but what's not normal or what's not the same for every team is how they handle that injury adversity. Some teams, they suffer from it. Some teams are able to survive it and play at a high level. In the game against the Washington Wizards, first half of a back-to-back set, the Detroit Pistons, they're without some key guys. They're without Jaden, Ivey, they're without Tobias Harris, they're without Ausar Thompson, Isaiah Stewart, Caris LeVert, some really high-quality basketball players, and they needed other guys to step up, and that's exactly what they got. And one guy that's looked really impressive so far to me is Daniss Jenkins, who's currently a 2-way player for the Detroit Pistons right now, playing for the Pistons and also playing for the Motor City Cruise. But what he did in that 4th quarter against the Wizards, and then the whole game in general, he was really good. But he knocked down a big-time 3-point shot to keep our winning streak alive, to send the game to overtime to where the Detroit Pistons could rally and win the game. And that right there, I think that sparked some real confidence from Daniss Jenkins, because in his next 2 games, the Detroit Pistons, they demanded an even bigger role from Daniss Jenkins, and he stepped up and delivered. Now in our next game, the Detroit Pistons, they had a back-to-back set, and the next game was against the Chicago Bulls at home again. And this time the Detroit Pistons, they're without even more rotational players. This time they're without Cade Cunningham, they're also without Jalen, Duren, and they're without the rest of those guys that we talked about again. And the Detroit Pistons, they needed Daniss Jenkins to come out and run the show for the Detroit Pistons, play that point guard position, and that's exactly what he did. He looked more than comfortable creating his own shot out of the pick and roll, and also setting up his teammates, and at the same time providing a high energy level on the defensive side of the ball. In his start against the Chicago Bulls, running the show, he had 18 points to go along with 12 assists. And Daniss Jenkins, he followed it up again. Same situation, but this time he will have the support of Caris LeVert and Isaiah Stewart as well, as they return to the lineup in Friday's matchup against the Philadelphia 76ers. And this is also a very, very impressive performance by the Detroit Pistons, because this is a game where pape is on the line, and we know those role players, that $500K that they're going to be getting, that means a lot to them. So we've seen them perform with some stakes on the line, and Daniss Jenkins was once again big time, being that steady point guard hand for the Detroit Pistons. He pours in 19 points, 8 assists once again, facilitating and seeing the floor really well. And then also him and the Detroit Pistons in that game, they made Tyrese Maxey, he scored 31 points, but it took him 31 shots and a bunch of free throws. And Daniss Jenkins was tasked with dealing with him a lot of the night on the defensive side of the board. And that's what this winning streak has been about for the Detroit Pistons, or these last 3 games that I wanted to highlight for you guys. It's literally been about trusting the system, trusting the chemistry in the team, and trusting the philosophy of the team, and it's leading to wins. And other guys have been stepping up. Even Cade Cunningham in that first set of the back-to-back against the Wizards, he had to step up with all of those rotational guys out and take all of those shots. And he had the most misses in the game since Kobe and MJ. But the only difference is Cade Cunningham, he came out with a victory on top for his team in that situation. So he stepped up big time. Duncan Robinson has been really good in the last 2 games for the Detroit Pistons. In our last 2 games, we didn't have our super offensive engine point guard, Cade Cunningham, and Duncan Robinson, he produced his perimeter play, knocking down 3-point shots off the catch, off the dribble, and also attacking closeouts, getting downhill against the Chicago Bulls. He poured in 23 points, and then against the Philadelphia 76ers in the Cup game, he poured in 15 points. So Duncan Robinson, he's been another role player that has stepped up for the Detroit Pistons to keep this amazing winning streak alive. Jalen Duren and Ausar Stewart being out against the Chicago Bulls, and Jalen Duren and Jalen Duren also being out against the Philadelphia 76ers. Paul Reed had his number called for the Detroit Pistons, and he stepped up and delivered in that game against the Chicago Bulls. 28 points, 13 rebounds, and Paul Reed is something about those hands, man. He just knows how to get them on the basketball. 4 steals against the Chicago Bulls, and he also had 2 steals and 3 blocks against the Philadelphia 76ers. So whenever you can have your 3rd string center come in and serve as a backup center, if Ausar Stewart is out, or serve as the starting center and Jalen Duren out, that is a huge blessing. And Paul Reed, he steps up whenever one of those 2 guys are unavailable. So Paul Reed has been big time for the Detroit Pistons. And then also, and Javonte Green, he's another player that's had his number called for the Detroit Pistons on the last 3 games of this winning streak. He stepped up and he's provided a little bit of everything for the Detroit Pistons: scoring the basketball, rebounding the basketball, defending at a high level. He's getting a steal. He's getting a steal and a half of a block per game. And he also poured in 21 points in a much needed win to keep the streak alive against the Philadelphia 76ers. So shout out to Javonte Green. He's another guy. He's a veteran playing on a minimum deal. He could use that $500K. So we've seen the effort from him in that most recent win. And then it's not just, it's not just been individual things that has been keeping the Detroit Pistons, their winning streak alive. It's been a team effort. They're doing things. Everybody role is mattering on both the offensive and the defensive side of the ball. And you can see that's how everyone is playing. Everyone is playing like their role matters. And when that's happening, that means we have to give props to the Coach JB Bickerstaff. It's not normal that you see when a team goes down 6-7 rotational players. Excuse me, I didn't mean to say 6-7, but go down that many rotational players. It's not easy to win ball games, especially in a league that's as talented as the NBA. So we have to give as much props to Coach JB Bickerstaff that I'm giving. I have to give as much props to him that I'm giving to his players. He's been amazing at having these guys prepared, not being afraid to go deep in his roster and trying different lineup combinations. So I love what the Detroit Pistons got going right now. And what's so good about this is that I feel like they've been playing at an amazing level, but they haven't scratched the surface of how good they could be yet this season. So we haven't really seen them at full strength. So when we get to see that, we could probably see even more dominant performances from the Detroit Pistons. But that's what I wanted to talk about with you guys today. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, comment down below if you agree or disagree, and then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man. And it's curtains.